That sounds good to me.
Cool. Well, thank you all for joining, even though it's a small group. We are happy to have you. And yeah, we can both just introduce ourselves real quick. So I'm Jamie. I'm an intern with GEO right now, and I also was a transfer my sophomore year. And I'm a senior back on campus right now, and I studied abroad in Seville, which is a city in southern Spain, this past spring. So during COVID, but still had a really, really good experience prior to getting sent home. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk to you all about what it's like to study abroad and like some of the specific considerations for transfers.
Awesome. And I am Chelsi Colleton. I'm the assistant director for Global Ed. So I'll be talking more about like specifically policies and things to keep in mind from our end as a transfer student, and ways to keep in touch with us throughout the planning process. So to start out, let's talk about eligibility. So I copied the actual policy from our website because I want to kind of touch on a couple pieces of it. At Amherst, students are required to complete a minimum of 4 semesters of what's called full-time study in residence at the college. With COVID in mind, if you're studying remotely either this semester or you did in the fall semester, that still counts as full-time study in residence. So this year does count as your time at Amherst. So in addition to last fall and or this spring, you need to have 2 or 3 more semesters on campus. Typically, that means that transfer students are able to have a semester away, whether it's domestic study or international study. If you have any confusion about that, definitely talk to your advisor and or class dean as needed, which ties into my next point that you have to declare your major prior to studying away. So sometimes for transfer students, it's a very quick process. Maybe you want to study away in your second semester at Amherst, so you need to declare your major pretty quickly. And again, also talking with your academic advisor and class dean about what that looks like for graduation requirements. If you're thinking of or are required to do a thesis, definitely talking to your advisor about that because the process will be a lot shorter. So thinking about things in terms of timeline, maybe you can start some work while you are away or over the summer, but it's really going to depend on you individually and how much time you have at Amherst in total. So then thinking more generally about study away, like I mentioned, you can study away for a semester domestically or internationally. The main deadline to keep in mind if you're thinking about studying away next academic year, so either the fall, the spring, or for the entire academic year, is April 16th. That is our checklist deadline. And what the Ed Leave checklist does is it is your intent to study away. So it's not necessarily an application, but it does tell us when you're thinking of going and where you're thinking of going. That can change. We know that plans change, especially in times of COVID, but it should be as close to what you're planning as possible in terms of country and semester. So that is due April 16th. Now, it's just the first portion of the checklist that's due. So it's really just listing out the programs that you're interested in. You're acknowledging our policies about eligibility and travel, and then writing out some of your goals for your semester. It's not a very lengthy process. Usually it takes about like 5 to 15 minutes to complete, depending on how in-depth your goals are. But it's fairly quick. And we are planning on keeping a single checklist deadline going forward. We haven't decided the exact date for next year yet, but it will be in April again. So just keeping that cycle in mind that April is when you'll be doing the checklist for the following academic year. And for study away, we have homeschool tuition. So and I'll bring the next one about financial aid also. So what homeschool tuition means is that you are paying Amherst tuition for the semester that you're away, and then your program is charging you for housing and any other costs for things like meals or academic expenses. Now, if you are on financial aid, it does transfer. Yay. Your family contribution stays the same as if you're at Amherst. So what you do is you work with a financial aid counselor to create a budget for your semester away, where you list out everything that's a cost. So tuition, housing, meals, airfare, visa costs, anything like that. And financial aid will adjust your grant budget for the semester so that your family contribution stays the same. There are a few things that financial aid doesn't cover, but your financial aid counselor will go over that with you in detail. And then if a semester isn't an option for you for whatever reason, you can study away in the summer as well. Summer study away does not transfer credit or financial aid, but there are summer fellowships that you can apply for the summer. The deadline did pass for the GEO fellowships for this upcoming summer. The applications are typically due in February or early March. Just keep an eye out for those for next year. But if you are interested in going away this summer, definitely connect with us, because a lot of programs have internal scholarships that you can apply for, or other financial aid that you can apply for through them. So definitely touch base with us so we can help connect you with that information as needed. And now I'll transfer it to Jamie, who has all the fun information about her semester away.
Cool. Thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, so Chelsea has obviously touched on a lot of the logistics of study abroad, but I really want to talk more about why I think it adds a lot to the experience, specifically of being a transfer at Amherst. So as I mentioned, I studied in Spain last spring, and really it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, and definitely like the highlight of transferring to Amherst, and actually a big reason why I wanted to. It was really just so incredible to be like in a different place, fully in a different culture. It was like nothing I'd ever been through before. And just in terms of logistics, it was also just really easy and nice to have GEO and your program like support you through the visa process and all of that. And they really make it a pretty seamless process, which is kind of super unique to a college study away experience that we probably won't be able to replicate after college. But yeah, beyond that, I just wanted to say that like, being a transfer at Amherst is not always the easiest thing. Everyone has their friends already. And sometimes it's hard to break into that. So I found study abroad to be like a really, really great way to build new connections, and have different friends in college outside of the Amherst bubble that we have. So it's really cool that now I have like a group from study abroad. And I think that is like a huge, huge plus. Of building new friendships in college, and I also just found that being in a situation where everyone is new to the program made it really nice, and I wasn't like the fish out of water anymore. We were really all totally new to the situation, so I just found people to be like really open and willing to make new friends, which was really great. Mm-hmm. Oh, I also wanted to highlight briefly in those I included those last two photos because the one on the left was my orientation group, which was a whole new group of people that I made a lot of close friends with. And then the one on the right is actually with two of those other girls are go to Amherst. So it was cool. I didn't really know them before, but we happened to choose the same program and had that common ground. So I also like made more Amherst connections while abroad, which is always fun. And yeah, here is some advice for transfers, because studying abroad as a transfer can definitely be a little more logistically challenging and overwhelming. So here are just like a couple of things that I found helpful in the planning process. For one, especially now with people being off campus at different times, and a lot of us are probably E's as well, like I would encourage you to definitely think about your ideal timing for study abroad, and try and like coordinate it with close friends and stuff, just because right now a lot of people, we might only overlap with some people on campus for a semester, which is kind of sad. So I would definitely just think about that one and try and plan early. And especially now I know a lot of people are going abroad at more like non-traditional times. So even if you're a sophomore or something, you might still be able to go. That might be a good decision. And then my second piece of advice is to map out in detail how you'll finish your major. This is definitely good advice for everyone, but for transfers, I think it's like especially important just because we obviously are on a shorter timetable to finish a major, and especially if you're like a STEM person trying to write a thesis, anything that's heavy on the requirement side, really make sure that when you come back to Amherst, you're not going to be like super overwhelmed trying to finish your major at the last minute. And then my last piece of advice is to talk to other Amherst students who have done the program that you're interested in. And if you don't know anyone, which you probably don't know anyone because there's only a couple people each year, definitely reach out to me or Chelsea or anyone in GEO to connect you with someone. Because for me, I knew I wanted to go to Spain, but I was also really conflicted. Like I'd never been to the country before, so how would I really know where I want to be? And I found that just having a couple conversations with people who had been to the programs I was interested in, like 100% sold me on where I wanted to go. So definitely do that. The conversations you have cannot be replicated through looking at the program website. It's just not the same. So definitely talk to people. Yeah, I also wanted to touch a little bit on what abroad during COVID looks like, because obviously this is like the elephant in the room. You have to consider this. So obviously, I'm not going to say like, look at the case numbers and traveling, like that's very obvious, but I would say just beyond that, also think about like what the cultural norms are in the place that you're studying. So, in the US, when COVID first happened and we were all told to stay at home, that didn't, some people stayed at home and some people didn't. So, but in Spain, when people were told to stay at home, everyone stayed at home, like, and no questions asked. So think about, if things do get bad, are you going to be safe there? And also just, the US is a very individualistic culture versus some other places are much more family oriented. So even though I did have to leave Spain, I felt that if I had stayed there during COVID, it wouldn't have been ideal, but I would have felt safe and definitely like supported. Oh, and then a last point I actually wanted to make on that. This is just a personal take, but if you're stuck between a couple places, I would definitely choose a warmer weather place. I was very fortunate to be in like a really nice sunny place where everyone socialized outside, and that was like the norm. This picture was pre-COVID, so I would just strongly recommend that over a colder indoor activities type of place. And then I also want to touch a little bit on homestays, but I also wanted to ask the group if anyone is actually considering a homestay, so I don't talk your ear off about this if it's not relevant.
Yeah, I'm not really considering a homestay.
Okay.
Neither am I.
Okay.
Also not considering a homestay.
Cool. Okay. Well, I can pretty much skip this then, but and I know it's definitely tough and different during COVID, but it was something that I was really worried about before abroad. So I just wanted to alleviate any worries if there were any. But I'm good if we can skip through this slide, Chelsea. Yeah, so my last point is kind of about returning to Amherst and just what I feel I learned and gained from study abroad. And I really feel that after study abroad, I gained a lot more confidence in myself and learned how to deal with uncomfortable situations. I was obviously in a place where I didn't know the language that well either, so that was a whole piece of it. But I really felt like if I can navigate these situations of, even like talking to a taxi driver, ordering at a cafe and getting laughed at, like uncomfortable situations like that, I feel like they really built a lot of character. And that when I returned my senior year, I just felt like an overall more confident person. And that I was definitely just much more ready to take on different situations. So yeah, that kind of goes hand in hand with like post-grad years. I definitely feel a lot more prepared now to live on my own than I had before. And I really think study abroad just puts you out of your comfort zone just enough in a way that really helps you grow a lot. And yeah, that is everything we have prepared for you all. Thank you all for joining.